Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I'm a birth doula with the Doula Group of Evansville. I became a doula in 2006 after my daughter was born, and I practiced for a couple of years and then took a break and have gone full-time now into birth doula work as of 2020. I have two kids, and they're 6 and 8. And they're one of the better things about me. Personally, I had two unmedicated births. One of them was born in the hospital. We were hoping to have him at home and ended up transferring. And once we got there, I actually felt really safe and really comfortable with the birth team. My midwife and doula were able to be with me, as well as my husband and sisters-in-law. So that was back before things were limited for visitors. And then my daughter was born at home a couple years later.
How did you end up here?
I grew up in northern Kentucky, and my family, a lot of my family is here. So I spent most of my summers and holidays visiting Evansville. And after I left college, I went to UK, go Wildcats. Now I don't really have any investment in that. I moved to Utah for a year, and then I moved to Nevada after that. And I was there for the majority of the last 15, 16 years. And when the pandemic happened, my husband and I reevaluated and talked a lot about our lives. And one of the things that felt really important to me was to be closer to family. And so we reached out to my dad, who is here in the Evansville area, and asked him what he would think if we were to be his neighbors, because we knew that this area would give us a lot of flexibility in our lifestyle, give us some more space, like to just make a lot of big changes. So my kids have a ton of family around now. My mom is still up in northern Kentucky, so we get to see her a lot. And we've just really been enjoying the freedom. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. And now it gave me the opportunity to become a birth doula full time.
Yeah.
I really like the space that we have here. We live kind of outside of town, so we came from living in a congested downtown type suburb in Reno to now we have 4 acres and a lot of space. I like the sense of community here. You would think that coming from a city that there would be more interactions and things like that, but in Reno it was a little bit harder to be neighborly and connected to people. And so one of the things that I love about where we are specifically is how much the neighbors look out for each other. We've built some really beautiful friendships and connections here just within a really short amount of time that I don't know, it just feels like the right place to be at this time in our lives. Yeah. I like to think of myself as like a little grandma in this body. I love nurturing people. I don't know. I wish everybody would let me hug them like as long as I wanted to. But my favorite part about being a doula is just that the moment of magic that happens when parents meet their babies for the first time. We spend so much time thinking about how the baby's going to get here and what's going to happen in those moments. And then that moment when mom and baby connect, you just see everything shift and change, and this sense of like magic. Sometimes it's relief or just marveling at how far they've come to get to that moment. And that's what really makes it worth it, is honestly just, I can't believe that I get to be witness to that. I get really excited when I meet potential clients that are really invested in learning more about themselves through the process of birth, that the clients that ask a lot of questions of their providers and really are interested in the transformative aspects of birth, how it's not just, this process that they go through to get a kid later, but that they're really interested in learning how much transformation can happen within them. And then to me, that just informs the rest of their lives with how they're going to parent, how they're going to communicate with their partner, how they show up for themselves. If that work hasn't already started before becoming pregnant, then that's a really beautiful time to start digging into that work. The book that I most often recommend, and really it's just because that was the one that I felt most drawn to in my experience, is Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth and then her Guide to Breastfeeding. What I like about those books is that they are story-based and they really show a variety of approaches, and a way of connecting to yourself. So, I mean, everybody is different. If people are already active with yoga or running or walking, even just having some sort of movement practice, I think is really important to maintain through pregnancy, not treating it like, an illness, but continuing to live your life as normally, spending time nurturing your body with foods that feel nutritious to you, and making sure they're hydrated, and finding a movement practice, whatever it is. It could be anything that connects you to what's taking place in your body, the changes that you're going through, the growth that's happening. Because really, as you shift in pregnancy, I mean, you're not just growing a baby, you're learning a whole new way about your body. So to me, yoga is a great practice to learn how to move with this new form that you're taking. Even just simple walks to stay connected to the world, to the earth, whatever it is. The first time I enjoyed being pregnant, yes. At the time when I was pregnant for the first time, I was really active. I had been running a lot and I was teaching yoga, and I was just like really connected to my body. I felt really good. I wasn't sick or anything, and I was just sort of marveling at the process, and I was really excited. The second time, I was fortunate to be able to get pregnant quickly, but that was almost shocking to me because I think we made the decision to try for a second baby, and it happened very quickly, and then all of a sudden I wasn't so sure that I actually wanted to do it. And so I wrestled with those feelings for a while, and I think that's sort of what led into a tougher pregnancy. The second time I was much sicker, and just generally mentally not healthy, and physically didn't take great care of my body during that pregnancy. So I just let the second one sort of bowl me over. So I look back on some of that time with, again, that feeling of being disconnected and a little bit of wishing I could go back and remember more of it. What I was going to say is this. Yeah. It's amazing to me that in that postpartum time with my second child, how it felt like it would be endless. Some of those feelings, I couldn't really imagine ever feeling like myself again. And once I started finding those practices that brought me back into my body and reconnected me with myself, whether it was yoga or meditation or just talking to a friend for however long I needed to just process some of the things I was feeling, slowly over time, I started to feel like myself again.
You could just keep talking.
And what happened is my relationship with my daughter changed. in the beginning, it was full of a lot of resentment because I was feeling so disconnected from myself through the process. And now that she's 6, you know, we've really changed a lot in the last few years. And I'm being honest when I say it was a good 3 years before I felt myself return. And that doesn't mean that I wasn't present. It doesn't mean that I wasn't parenting the best that I could. I was, showing up for them every day and showing up for my family and just feeling a little lost in that. But now, honestly, my kids are the total joy of my life. And my daughter is somebody that, like,
Sorry.
I mean, it's wild to me to think how hard of a time we had in the beginning, and there's really no one else that I'd rather spend my time with. And I don't mean that to say, like, that I feel a sense of comparison between my children in any aspect, but what I really love is the shift that I felt. And I wish I could say, like, there's some magic way it happened, but it really just was time and doing some more work on myself and really leaning in the hard moments. And yeah, I mean, they're just delightful even when they're crazy.
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry
Take
about this.
Take a
I want to say not really at all, other than making sure that I'm keeping myself healthy, that I'm taking really good care of myself nutritionally and taking a lot of vitamins and getting exercise, making sure I follow the protocol that helps keep my clients safe, and just learning, if anything, it's helped me learn more about people. But it hasn't changed how I show up for my clients. They still get the same level of connection and nurturing that they need or want in any case. And I don't know, short answer is hasn't changed very much for me. I'm often frolicking through the fields. Well, I bought a bike since moving here. So you can find me riding my bike, or taking a walk, or just playing outside with the kids. Anything to just get some fresh air. We started a garden last year, so while I am not a green thumb, I will often go out and look at the garden and spend time with it. What else am I doing? I don't know. Anything to be outside. Just get a little sun on our faces and enjoy the air. The one thing I do love about this area is, I mean, you'd think the sunsets in the mountains are spectacular, and they are, but I mean, the skies here, they're just so big and beautiful. And so we spend a lot of time outside, which is wild to me because in Reno, I mean, the weather was great all the time. Even in the summer, it would get boiling hot during the day, but by the evening, you could be outside and there were no mosquitoes. But here, yeah, I know, miraculous, no mosquitoes. We didn't fully appreciate it until we got here, and we want to sleep outside and be outside until the wee hours of the night, and we are being eaten alive by mosquitoes. As a doula, there have been some moments when you hear alarms going off, whether it's from a machine or from a provider coming in the room and expressing their own fears. And what I like to do is take a moment of pause and check in and see if that, whatever the fear is or concern in the moment that's creating a sense of chaos or fear, whatever it is, I just check in with myself and get a temperature on the room. Is this a provider's agenda, or is it, a misread on the monitor, or if it's a heart issue or something with the baby, just to see what's really happening, because it can get it's really easy to get swept up in the energy of other people in a birth scenario. And sure, there are times that I have legitimately been afraid, and for good reason, but that's not very often. So what I do is, because my tendency, if somebody falls down and gets hurt, I'm the one that's making the loudest sound. I can't control myself. That's not what I do in a birth situation, though. It's really funny to like see those two sides of myself, where in my, I'll call it my daily life, um, my reactions are much different than if I am at a birth. And that's because I have learned that we don't need to react to everything in those settings, and we do need to check in and look somebody in the eye and see if they're really communicating something that is serious and concerning, or if there's another agenda behind it. Yeah, I would say of the births I've attended, there's a very small percentage that like a true fear has come in. And what I have witnessed in those moments is a laboring person's ability to really connect in with themselves. It's sort of like when you're experiencing a trauma or witnessing a trauma, something else takes over. It's sort of like all of our instincts kick in to help us get through the moment, and then we're able to process that later. But those are really beautiful moments to be witness to, of problem solving and connecting with ourselves to work through any fears that we may be experiencing. There's this really beautiful book that my kids have called The Rabbit Listened, and it's about a little boy who is building this like castle out of blocks, and I was going to say a flock of crows, but a murder of crows comes through and knocks them down, and he experiences the sense of loss and grief at what he's built has now been taken out. And through the story, different animals come in to sort of hold space with him. And, a snake comes in and wants to go knock down someone else's creation, and a bear comes in and wants to growl and roar and be mad about it, and a kangaroo wants to just tidy it up and fix everything. And and finally a little rabbit comes in and just sort of nestles its body next to the little boy, and just sits there and waits for the boy to start talking. He waits for him to express, and doesn't try to shift the space for him in any way other than just being there. And so through that, the little boy is able to process all of his feelings, and eventually the resolution is that, the next thing he builds will be even bigger and better. And so to me, holding space is a lot like that you show up and you don't press your agenda on anyone, that you show up for people exactly as they need. And that takes some work. For me, it wasn't my nature to just be able to do that for people. I've had to do a lot of work with, knowing when to say things and when to hold back, knowing my own stuff from someone else's, and what not projecting onto anyone. And so I often remember that story when I show up in a birth space. I show up, I listen before I talk. I get a sense of what people need, and if they're not telling me, I ask those questions to get to know what they need, so that I can show up as fully as possible, and be the one who listens, and be the one who nurtures through just, I don't know, being a little snuggly rabbit. That came to me through the time that I was doing a lot of like grief work and learning about how to hold space, especially in moments of grief and with loss. And because my relationship with those things was always to be fearful and to run away, and I didn't know how to hold space for someone who has experienced trauma or grief. And when I became a doula, it became very clear to me that in order to be comfortable in holding space for birth, that I personally had to get really comfortable in holding space for death, because to me they're not that different, these phases of our life cycle. And so it felt really important to me to lean into that and not carry any fears about anything when I show up in a birth space about any of it. So, all right. For me, one of the first steps in advocating for my clients is getting to understand their relationship with their provider. Sort of learning the nuance of that and understanding, one, how much they're willing to advocate for themselves. Because to me, I can show up and I can have my own feelings about everything. I can encourage a client to speak up for themselves in ways that are meaningful. But I can't always do that for them. I don't have a gentler way to say this, but I can't care more about someone than they care about themselves. And if I do, that's when my heart breaks. That's when I leave a birth feeling devastated. And that's been one of the hardest parts of this work. I will inform clients of anything that they have questions about. I encourage them to do their own research. I encourage them to ask really hard questions to their providers. And I encourage them that if they're expressing a discomfort to me, that they may want to dig in and find a way to bring a voice to that for themselves. Because that's the first step of advocacy, is being able to find our own voice. So I never want to show up in a birth space and be the one calling any shots. That's not our role. It's to encourage and empower the families to be able to do that for themselves. And if I see hesitation, I can be a whisper in their ear. I can be the voice that says, this is a moment that it's time. It's time to speak up for yourself. What do you really want? I can ask those questions and help them lean into the moment rather than just letting it sweep over them and someone else's agenda takes over this experience. And I think, not just in a birth setting, but I think that's what we can do for anyone in daily life, is not speak up and out for them, but encourage them to do that work for themselves. And lead by example. So that means that in my life, I find it important to speak up for myself. And that's been a huge process for me, is learning how to do that. So I can't show up for someone and encourage them to do the same if I'm not doing the same for myself. And we all have our own brand of how we speak for ourselves. So for me, I'll give this as an example. When our birth plan changed, when my son was born, we were at home with the midwife and a doula. And when she said, I think we need to transfer to the hospital because he was having heart decels, and she wasn't comfortable staying home if she was going to hear it continuously. So we went to the hospital, and when we got there, I was told that the OB that was attending was one of the more difficult OBs, and that he was often very pushy with his agenda, and that the midwife and the doula, they were both able to come along and be with me as my support people, and they had their own feelings about this person, and they were kind of whispering those in my ear. So that was a moment that I could have let their fears and their experiences take me over. But what I chose to do was get really quiet, get really internal. And I made a decision in that moment to treat this person that I didn't know, that I was being told stories about. I looked at my team and I said, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And every time he comes in the room, I will treat him with love. no matter what he's saying to me. And that was my way of advocating for myself, because he came in and he was sending in orders with the nurses before he had even met me. And I said, before I do anything, I want him to come in this room and see what we're doing here. And that was my ask. That was, don't send in your requests without meeting me, because I am a human having a human experience. And so when I did meet him, he came in and he was, I will never forget him. He was lovely. He was kind. He was calm. He backpedaled a bit and he said, oh, I see how you're doing this. And, you know, maybe I would do things differently, but in a few hours, another doctor will be on call, and maybe that will be the person that is here when your baby is born. And so I think sometimes we think that advocacy has to be like, go in with our fists up and our armor on, but it can also be from a really soft place of holding your ground from a space of love. All right. Sometimes I leave a birth and you're riding the waves of emotions, and sometimes those are really big, really fulfilled, sort of energetic feeling, and so I'll listen to really lively music. And sometimes you leave a birth and you're just wiped, you know, and or emotional if it's been an emotional journey. It's not like I don't carry those things with me. I have to have my own process. So I'll listen to music that purposefully makes me sad so that I can cry it out and just release. And I'm a crier by nature. I cry at happy, sad. Oh my gosh, if, you know, any person I don't even know is on a stage, I'm like weeping for them because I'm just so proud of what they're doing.